Let's talk about an assignment for Chapter 6 that is not in your textbook. It's the assignment that asks you to put numbers in ascending and descending order. I'm going to show you a partial algorithm of how that would work. These numbers will be integers that we're going to work with. So you would have inputs of 3 numbers of integers. Outputs are going to be those numbers, but they're going to be high, medium, and low. So I'm going to have variables called high, medium, and low. I'm going to skip down to the algorithm portion. And as with all our algorithms in this class, usually the first thing is the user has to enter something. And in this case, they're going to enter number 1, number 2, and number 3. You cannot request that these be entered in any specific order because that would defeat the purpose of this program. Once you have 3 numbers in, I chose to find the lowest number first, hence the variables that I have as a low, medium, and high. So I'm going to find the low number. Now, the first line is strictly pseudocode. If number 1 is less than number 2 and it's less than number 3, then the low number has to be number 1. Correct? Follow? This little arrow shows you this is how that translates into C++. I have to ask if number 2 is less than, if number 1 is less than number 2, and if it's less than or equal to number 3. If it's both of these, then the low number is number 1. But I can't stop there. What if it's number 2 or 3? So I have to keep asking the same situation question in C++, but I have to switch the numbers. So if number 2, how do I determine if number 2 is the lowest or number 3? Well, and you can see right here I've already got a boo-boo. Let me fix this. So if number 2 is less than or equal to number 1 and number 3, then number 2 would be the low number. If number 3 is less than or equal to number 1 or number 2, then number 3 would be the low number. So this or some version of these statements will get you the low number, and once you find it, you hold on to that number. You put it in low, or whatever variable you call it. Let me just say that you would repeat something similar for finding the high number. So finding the low number and the high number are fairly direct. The harder will be finding that middle number because it's a little more complicated if-else's. So I've devoted a section to that just to give you an idea. This is in C++, not strict C++, but enough to show you how you have to do things. So suppose I'm trying to find out if number 1 is the middle number. Okay, well first it would have to be either less than number 2 and greater than number 3, or it has to be greater than number 2 and less than number 3. And I do have equal in here. There's a reason for that. If you want to write your program and then take the equal out, you might find out why you might need the equal. But that's a fun way to play with it, okay? So if that number is less than or equal to 2 and it's greater than or equal to 3, then the mid number is number 1. That's one way to get there. Okay? Now, I have some else's in here. You could actually do this as just a series of if statements with no else's. Okay? So keep that in mind. More than one way to skin a cat. If number 1 is greater than or equal to 2 and less than or equal to number 3, it's still the middle number. And then you repeat this scenario for numbers 2 and numbers 3 until you find that middle number. So let's assume you found the low number, the middle number, and the high number. Okay, so what happens after all of those are found? So let me put a page break in here and scoot down here. So once you found them, you have to print ascending order. Well, what does that mean? That means 1, 2, 3. That means the numbers go up. So to print in ascending, you're going to do something like this. Remember, ascending goes up. Now, watch what I have to do. I'm putting some spaces in there that are not going to be there if you don't do this. Okay? So if you don't put a little spacing with your variable names in the sentence, it'll all your numbers run together and you will get taken off for that. So I do expect you to pay attention to the screen. So you would say the numbers in ascending order are low, and notice I've got spaces after R, I have spaces after low, mid, and high, and then high has just the end return, the carriage return after it, okay? So then I can copy this basically below and just make a minor change or two. The numbers in descending, and what would that be? That would be high, mid, low. Now you have to print these both ways for this program. So remember, this is a sample algorithm. I did not show you how to find the high number. It would work similar to finding the low number. You just have to reverse some signs in here to find that. I've given you an example of how you might find the middle number. Remember, middle numbers require you to make a comparison more than one way. It's no longer less than or equal to two numbers. When you're in the middle, you have to be greater than a number and less than the number. So that complicates things a little. So that's an example. Then how to print that out, and this is an example of that also.